Today we have a speaker, Randall Hallett, who's the CEO of Hallett Philanthropies. Is a really long history in philanthropic work.
That means I'm old, which is accurate.
I would say experienced with a lot to
It's
give,
okay.
but and I know he had worked for the Nebraska Medical Center in-house there as their lead development officer. He's worked with a lot of educational organizations, other healthcare organizations, leading all kinds of philanthropy, but having a specific focus in planned giving. And today he's going to talk to us and present about the importance of motivation in people, donors making gifts, and the entry points to talk about that and to move them forward. And so, Randall?
You're going to turn it over to me?
Well, thank you. Turn it over to you
Wow.
to tell us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You haven't as much time.
That's great. I'm not going to stand behind a podium. I've never been accused of being overly quiet. I am appreciative for the opportunity. It's nice to be home. Keith is nice enough to mention, and you can see behind me some of the things that I do. I've been fortunate in my career. Yesterday was, as I say, double cinco, my birthday, turned 55. And I used to be the youngest person in almost every room that I sat or worked in. I was a chief development officer coming out of law school at 25 and a half years old at a Catholic Jesuit school, the equivalent of Creighton Prep in Kansas City, Missouri. And I look back and I'm thinking, what was that Jesuit priest thinking when he hired me to oversee all of that? But what I've learned is that has been a blessing of a career. I'm coming up on 30 years of doing this. And now I look around, starting in the morning with all the gray hair I see in the mirror, and look around the room, and now I'm amongst the more senior members. But in that, I think, is part of the reason I enjoy being here. I view my life, the last 10 or 15 years of my career that I hopefully will be blessed to have as a teacher. I teach my clients, but more importantly, I want to teach our brethren, us, that there's a better way of doing this. And that's what I spend most of my time talking about. I will tell you that all of these things, and we'll talk more about them from a planned giving, gift planning perspective, those are all things that I do. Those are not the things that I am. What I am is I'm a fifth generation Nebraskan. My kids are sixth. We live right behind Westside High School. My parents and family, my dad's parents in Lincoln, my mother's parents in Omaha, my grandparents have been heavily involved from a civic perspective. There are a number of University of Nebraska people. Mom and dad I think mom just left the trustees of the University Foundation Board, have been very involved. My dad actually, when he sold his company, my mother, after about 4 or 5 months, called me and said, "You need to come home." I was engaged at the time and came home to the house that they had moved to at the bottom of the hill that mom still lives at 93rd and Pacific. And she says, "You got to find your father a job because at 57, I can't do this. He's got to get out of the house." And so dad started the foundation, kind of restarted it, at Westside High School, in the Westside School District. He was their executive director and started all their major gift campaign. You probably have read recently the work that has been phenomenally done to build their new natatorium that I think everybody in the district's proud of, $34 million, all done by philanthropic dollars in a public school district. I find that interesting because that was my dissertation subject for my doctorate, was studying public school philanthropy in the United States and how its growth is going to really determine the investment that comes outside of usually tax dollars. So I'm a son and heavily involved here in Omaha, or at least believe myself as an Omahan, tell people all the time Omaha is the greatest place in the world. You keep driving through it and flying over it, we're going to stay. I am a son, I am a husband to my wife, who I just adore more than anything, 25 plus years. I have no idea why she has stuck with me this long. And I'm also a dad. We have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. And I appreciate Boys Town and being here. Our son had massive medical issues when he was a little tiny boy. I call him our $2 million kid. And while we did get emergent help from Children's Hospital, because basically he stopped breathing in my arms about 8 days after his birth, It's been Boys Town, to be honest, that has been the catalyst to get us through the challenges that he has when it comes to what's called FPIEs. He mentioned neurology. I'm like, gastro. He didn't mention it. But our son has something called food protein-induced enterocolitis syndrome. He was the 101st person in the world to be diagnosed with it. He cannot have proteins related to soy, dairy, or gluten. He's going to live to be 173 years old. He has never had anything out of a box out of a grocery store. He's never had a soda. He's never had a candy bar. He is wicked smart. He starts his days every day at the middle school with the 8th graders in math, and then they take him back to 6th grade after 2+ hours because they finally said, we can't do anything with him. We got to get him up where he can do some intellectual, challenging work in math and science. I'm also a dad of a 9-year-old. Now, if you want to say that raising a daughter and a son is similar, you're nuts. I am, as an example, the coach of both of all their teams, basketball, soccer, robotics, whatever. And last night we had practice. We did the girls from 6:30 to 7:30, and then I did the boys from 7:30 to 9:30. The boys are dumb and stupid and easy, and the girls are going to kill me. But I tell you all of this because I heard your entry-level question. And the question was around what was the reasons that people have given the gifts that you have been involved with. And while I think it is the single most important question, I think it is easily the easiest question because we don't do this in the right way. And you'll see this throughout my conversation. And the reason I tell you a little bit about me is that because you'll figure out that it ties to why I'm here and what we do. The answer to the question is passion. At the very end, I'm going to give you language that I've learned over the years and what I teach throughout the world around how we enter into these conversations. It's yours. I give more stuff away. Well, let me do this. I give more stuff away than I actually sell. So one example is I do this weekly podcast where I take one subject, figure out what the problem is, and give the answers, all in 20 minutes. My classroom. And I don't even know what this week's is. There's 250, 60 something of them. But the point is that I believe that we need to share this information. So at the very end, and by the way, this presentation will go out through Keith or Christina or whomever, with all the language. But the point is that the answer is passion as to why people choose to make estate gifts. And the questions that we ask are actually quite easy if we know what to ask. So today's conversation, I'm hoping, will elevate that thought process, but also give you ammunition to go back to into your organizations and fight for different metrics. To say the metric, by the way, I'm a metrics-driven person, but if we're not measuring how many planned giving conversations we've entered our donors into and measuring that. I didn't say get a gift or intention. I just said how much are we in. How many partnerships? So there's some large organizations. We'll take the University of Nebraska as a good or a bad example, where it's not as centralized. The point of all of this is that we can't, if we don't measure what's actually going to drive the largest sums of opportunity, which we'll talk about, then the human behavior, the natural way in which humans interact and think about themselves and their successes will be diminished. And so go back and fight for different metrics. Fight for long-term, longitudinal, transformational giving. I'm hoping the data today can be used. You can go back and say to your leaders, if you're not that leader, or your boards, we're asking and looking at the wrong things. We're never going to maximize what we can do for our communities if we don't leverage where the money is. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. And at the very end, I want this to be tactical. I believe in when I teach, consult, that if you don't walk out with 2 or 3 things you can apply the minute you walk out the door, I have wasted your time. And so we're going to try to combo this all together. The last thing I will say is, first of all, I'm not a sport coat person. My wife makes me buy them, and I have a couple suits. So you can take off your coat if you want, but I'm taking off mine. The second thing is if I put my big fat butt down behind you, it's not because I'm being disrespectful. I have my second knee replacement on December 8th. I had the first on June 13th. Football's finally caught up to me. in a lot of sports, and so there are times where literally it hurts. I don't have another way to put it. And so with 2.5 hours of basketball practice last night, I may plant my butt behind me. We'll see how it goes. But I want to start with why we're talking about this, and really what we don't talk about in our organizations enough. There's data out there to tell us why what we do in estate and plan giving is not only probably the most important thing that should be going on in our organizations from a philanthropic perspective in terms of discussion and incentivizing and certainly the conversations we have with donors, but I would argue it's the future of philanthropy. So thanks to the Federal Reserve of St. Louis for providing some of this data. I'm big on attribution. I didn't pull this data personally, but I did take it from them. Is that we know, and I think most of us are aware of this, that a very small percentage of the wealth in the United States is concentrated, a great number of amount of the wealth is concentrated in a very small group of people. And actually we know the numbers, that 74% of the wealth is actually only found in 13 million families. So it actually makes our job easier because we know generally who we should be talking to, who we should be thinking about, how we build relationships. This also affects major gift work because it also then says, how do we figure out ways to enter into these initial conversations? We all know in planned giving that this usually is not the first gift that the organization receives as a planned gift. There's usually a series of gifts, series of relationships, years of commitment. They've begun to figure out their passion is tied to you. And so part of this is figuring out how do we take this and get it to this? Because my guess is none of you have unlimited budgets, whether you are the University Foundation or a big organization or an individual that you're here. Everybody's fighting for dollars inside of our nonprofits. So we've got to become more efficient, and it's actually quite easy to do. But this is the question that most of our organizations are asking. How many of you have CFOs asking this question? Where's the money? We need more of it. Go get more of it. Would you believe this is the wrong question? But we know this, but we don't position it this way. Because there's a better question that we need to help our leaders, our boards, our own organizations, our fundraisers understand. That question isn't where's the money, it's where's the asset. And how many times have you actually heard someone in your organization ask this question? The answer is almost never. Because as soon as we say asset, the common vernacular that we live with changes. And our finance people, our finance committees, our planning agencies, our planning departments, all of a sudden have a different perspective. 80% of the dollars in the United States are behind what I call a marketable wall. They are not easily attainable. They don't exist in checking accounts. So we're back to limited resources, maximum outcome, okay? So this is from the Federal Reserve. If we know 80% of the dollars, assets, resources of the United States are not liquid, how important are the people in this room and what we do? How many of you are having this conversation internally, strategically? This is the conversation we need to be having. This is the data you need to go back and say, you want to know why we're putting money into things like outreach and conversations and partnerships with our major gift teams and figuring out and doing some analytics and doing some research? It's because 80% of the resources of the United States are in the area that we deal with. And what do our organizations tend to find themselves looking for? The 20%. And I look at those organizations and say, you're going to be out of business or be short of cash within the next 5 to 10 years. So I do a whole nother series of conversations and presentations around what's going on in the United States from a financial perspective, which is incredibly ironic in day, 35, 36, whatever we're in. 37, thank you. It was great to be in Chicago for an extra whole day this week. I told my son, I said, my 12-year-old, I said, hey, I'm always trying to teach my kids stuff. I said, you always take an extra couple pairs of underwear and a shirt just in case. I got home and my son goes, Dad, you're really smart. I said, yes, I am, because I needed it this week. We are going to go through a massive change financially in our country in the next 10 to 15 years. I don't know what the answers are. But we are going to run into Social Security changes, Medicaid changes, and Medicare changes. And I am apolitical. I blame them all. I am not a liberal or conservative. They all suck in Washington as far as I'm concerned. They have screwed this up. But just to give you an example, yesterday a Democrat from Washington stood on the House floor and said, you know, some of the things we've done have cost us as a country a great deal of money because the cost of health care has gone up dramatically when we said it wouldn't. I was like, well, there's at least one human being who recognizes what the rest of us are feeling. Anybody gotten renewals in their, I mean, it's insanity. And then on top of that, I have a mother who I adore. She's in her 80s. Her Social Security, for which she doesn't need as much, to be honest. But in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see, it won't go away, but if you follow the numbers, it's going to drop 76% if they don't make changes of what the allocation or payments are sometime in 2032, 33. There's kind of a debate. The point is that if we don't spend our time figuring out how to balance the long-term viability of our nonprofits, where the most amount of money is, then what we're going to end up with is a situation where a lot of our nonprofits are not going to exist in the way that they do today. And we all know that planned giving doesn't happen like this. Now the CFOs, they think, well, just go get that estate kit. Just be quiet, because you have no idea what you're talking about. It's more complicated than that. We also know the division of labor throughout the United States. Visual Capitalist did a phenomenal study at the beginning of the year of how assets are broken apart in the United States. So you can take notes, take pictures, you will get this presentation. Whatever works for you, glad to share. So I want to give credit where they are. What we know is when we begin to break it apart, you begin to see the different asset classes that are in each generation, and you begin to notice some things. So the silent generation is born before 1946. We're losing them very quickly. But they still control about 12% of the assets in the United States. But every year it's dropping by percentages. I mean, it's not a tenth, it's like a whole percent. And the point is that if we start looking at it from the perspective of what is liquid, real estate, pensions, private business, DG is durable goods. That's like a car collection, or a card, baseball. Oops, sorry, went too far. We begin to see that 51% of their wealth in their life is not marketable. Which means if you're not involving planned giving activities in some way, shape, or form, it's not on the table. But here's the crazy thing. This is the least important group for us to worry about. Now, it's the most immediate, but I'll show you why. So then we're going to go to baby boomers. This is 1946 to 1964, generically, in terms of their birth year. And the same thing, and what you begin to figure out, first of all, it's 50% of the assets in the United States are controlled by this group of people. And we begin to figure out that 58% of their wealth, they're beginning to move away from pensions. There was this immense growth in the marketplace. People at the very back end began the conversations around things like IRAs, 401ks, early on, late in their careers. And all of a sudden, the assets that they have collected in their lifetime and inherited, they actually are not as marketable. And then we come to me, Generation X, as I like to call it, the sandwich generation, when you have an amazingly talented and completely independent 80-year-old mother who can't operate her phone, to my 12 and 9-year-old who think they can operate everything and anything and just screw up most things. Generation X, 1964 to 1980. And if we do the same thing, we are now beginning to see that even more assets in this class, now it's only at this point about a third, a little under a third of the wealth in the United States, but what we're beginning to see is that more and more of the assets are behind a marketable wall. And it's going to keep growing because my generation didn't have pensions. I'm not assuming I'm going to get Social Security. I think I will. But it's not going to be what probably people plan. And so I've got massive, and I'm a tax lawyer, I've got massive ways. I'm out ahead of my accountant and our financial planner. They look at me and go, wait, what do you want to do? I'm like, here's this and here's the law, because I'm one of those people who doesn't sleep and reads weird things at night about tax law, okay? How do I take my assets out of my company and get them into places that are protected for my wife and I and for our kids for college? Which means most of my wealth, and I am blessed beyond belief, I'm way above 69%, are behind a marketable wall. I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. With all due respect to, I have the tertiary, the quaternary beneficiaries. I'm one of those people who actually has a pretty detailed estate plan. Do you think you're going to get my liquid assets when I don't have very many? And by the way, if you haven't been paying attention, 25 years of marriage, they aren't mine in the first place. They belong to my wife. All of my wealth is behind this wall. If you're not thinking about how do I go back to take this information into my organization, talk about the priorities of plan giving, how we invest in it, and the relationships we need, this is the information to help your organization invest in this. Millennials are the craziest. So this is the largest group generationally in the United States, population-wise, number of people. But here's the crazy thing. This is the highest group of people who do not have liquid cash. This is the Mark Zuckerbergs. This is the group of people who invented things I don't quite understand. I don't have Twitter or Facebook or the Hulu. I'm not. Now, you want to get me like on AI, I'll go toe-to-toe with anybody. But in terms of how the world has learned to communicate, nah, you're going to have to text me. Man, I don't. DM me. I don't know what that means. I don't have that. The point is that these are a group of people who almost all of their wealth will be behind a marketable wall. They're not going to have cash. So is the future of plan giving and philanthropy more or less than today? And the evidence and the numbers show that it's more. And yet our organizations are fighting for cash. We're being pressured with metrics for cash. If given a choice, I truly believe some of our CFOs, finance committees, and others would say, you can have $50,000 today or $1 million in someone's estate. I truly believe more than I want to admit would take the cash. And then we get into the idea of what's coming. And these are numbers you probably are generally familiar with, but you need to go talk about them in detail. So whether it's Merrill Lynch or whether it's Sorelli or others, the numbers that have come out in the last year. So at the beginning of the year, it was about $84 trillion would transfer hands generationally from estate planning in the next 20 to 25 years. With the market this year, my guess is probably close to 90 trillion. I'm lucky enough to be a member, invitation only, of the Giving Institute and partner with the Lilly School of Philanthropy to do all the collection of data of all the philanthropy in the United States. I'm one of those nerds that starts looking at spreadsheets in about February or March, which is perfect because I'll be in rehab from my knee and I can just sit in my recliner and look at all these spreadsheets about it. That's what we do. We collect all of this. Part of that is trying to figure out what the plan giving conversations are. We look to others who do this much better. We take their results and add them in. What we also know is that only 11 to 14% at this point has been ID'd for philanthropy. So it's a very small percentage. And yet, we have this wise guy who, by the way, on November 5th, turned 95 years old, who told us all about what we need to be thinking. In 1986, in an interview with Fortune magazine, he said the following: I'm going to leave enough money to my children so that they could feel as if they could do anything, but not so much that they could do nothing. I've had the privilege, in part because of my grandparents and parents' position in this community, my honor of serving down at the medical center at 42nd Street in Dodge, of working with some of Omaha's and Nebraska's wealthiest people. And they all say this, all of them, every single one of them. I tell people when I travel, particularly in the United States, around the world, it doesn't mean quite as much. There are more millionaires and billionaires in Omaha, Nebraska per capita than anywhere else in the United States. And they're all saying the same thing. I'm going to leave some to my kids. And how many of us know people, and please don't say any names, who are in their 70s and 80s and giving their kids money now, and more than like, wow, I can't believe, do they not have a job? What's going on? I mean, I know how I was raised. Dad, military hero, West Point instructor. My mom, a pioneering journalist in broadcast journalism and television in the 1960s. Before she met Dad, was very clear to us, my two amazing sisters and I, we're gonna help you get started in life and then get the hell out and go do something with your life. We'll see you at Christmas. And that's the way we're raised. That's not how things are done with every family. What the consistency is they're saying this. And if we're really good at our jobs, and this is the part of the profession I miss the most, is where I am trusted to this day with some who will tell me more than they would ever even tell their children. That's the essence of estate and plan giving. When they know passion, that we're interested more about what they want than what we need. And what they keep telling us, I'm not gonna leave it all to my kids. Well, let's start talking about options. You can't burn it, can't be buried with it. So what are you gonna do with it? Well, how many of you have had a donor who said, I cannot wait to write that check of taxes to the IRS? So that's out. They're not gonna leave it all to their kids. With the change in the law, I don't talk about tax advantages all that much anymore with the new bill that was passed on July 4th. It's about a $15 million exemption and you probably know that, come January 1st. So the reasons are emotional that people choose to do this. Yes, if you have $100 million, there's probably a tax conversation to be had. But the reason estates are critical to the future of philanthropy is because it ties to their emotional center. What they value most in terms of their life. And while parents love their kids, nieces, nephews, and others, they're also saying, I'm not leaving it all to my children. Dad passed about 2.5 years ago. He was my best friend, and we talk 4 or 5 times a day about absolutely nothing. The last decade and a half has been about Nebraska football and how miserable we all are, but I miss him. But there's been one shining light of my 2.5 years without Dad is that my relationship with my mother has gone in places I never dreamed possible. Mom and Dad were tied at the hip. They never went anywhere without the other. And my mother, I live 6 blocks away. I have 2 great sisters, but they don't live here. And so I've become the point person. And I'm this crazy guy who asks a lot of questions, which we're going to talk about. And my mom now has control of the assets. She's trying to figure out what to do. And this sentiment has come up. You all don't need it. You're right, Mom. What do you want to do? What's important to you? What do you value the most? Where have you been treated the best? What organizations do you feel like respect you? What is it you want when you are no longer here for your life to mean and say? Passion. There's nothing more my mother loves than her children. Well, there actually is one, her grandchildren. We did our job, and anybody with grandchildren, I don't know what happens to you, but well, thanks for being my kid, but you've done your job. I'm going to spend my time over here, okay? We have got to begin to look at this differently. And this brings us to the essence. And then we're going to start talking about the tactics. We've got to stop leaving all the options, the best options, the most amount of money, the most thing that our donors are most important to them, their passion, how they connect to us, what they want for their community, how it's going to be a better world, if we don't talk about the assets that are available. I beg you, go back to your organizations and challenge the status quo. The thing I love most about consulting is I get to be a pain in the ass and get paid for it. Because these are the conversations I'm having worldwide. The largest healthcare system in Australia, they are my client. We're building a national system for philanthropy. Where does Australia's healthcare dollars come from? The government, 100%. And yet, it isn't enough to do what they want to do in healthcare in the country. They're turning to philanthropy. Germany, I have clients in Europe, same premise. Canada, same premise. The point is that people are trying to figure out how to make the world a better place. And all of our organizations are in the business of doing that. This is what the future is. Go back and fight for more dollars, more time, better metrics, and things that are going to make your organization push into these dollars, because this is how you're going to survive. So let's talk about the tactics, knowing the moment. We actually have immense data if we know where to look to figure out when these moments occur. So there are obviously the subtle cues. And this is why I really believe that the relationships we have with our donors has to be such, particularly in plan and estate giving, has to be such, there it is. Life would be a lot less without Diet Mountain Dew. Would have to be such that we get into conversations where they're telling us things and they don't even know they're telling us because they don't know what to do. Whether it's gratitude for something you've done, educationally, healthcare, social service, maybe it's positioning of engagement. I think we underplay the value that our volunteers have in our, and I'm not talking about board, I'm talking about others who show up. Like they show up 2 or 3 times a week to help out and you're like, that's your best plan giving prospect. This is their passion. They've chosen you in retirement to invest in. Just not monetarily maybe as much as you think. Organizations about asset, this is a huge thing in Omaha. I try to explain to people who don't live in Omaha, Nebraska, about how if, to take the 7 Faces of Philanthropy, anybody remember the book, Prince and File? The Communitarian, there's another book. I don't get any money for that. Prince and File, 1994. 7 Faces of Philanthropy. It should be a hallmark on every desk of every fundraiser, but more importantly, plan giving person that we have in our country. They broke it academically into categories, and one of which is called the communitarian, and their philanthropy is based on what's best for their community. Now, we can define community in different ways, but this is the difference between Warren Buffett and Walter Scott. Walter Scott viewed his communitarian viewpoint about Omaha, Nebraska. Warren Buffett views his communitarian view as the world, but they're both communitarians. They just viewed the geographic range of what that community was differently. This is why Warren's money is going, or was until there was a little issue with the Gates family, we'll leave that off the table, to a worldwide perspective, while Walter set up a foundation to say this is where the money's going to go here in Omaha or surrounding communities. The idea is that some people are very vested, and particularly in Nebraska, about how do I make the community a better place? How do I make what we're doing? And so you might look at them and say, well, how is it that we help? How is it that we do what they're trying to accomplish? And I would say you're asking the wrong question. The question is, what is it they really want to accomplish, and then tie it back to what you do. There's a difference. How many of you have sat down with some of your best plan giving prospects and said, tell me the 3 things that are the most important to you that you want to accomplish with your money? Take me out of it. Take our organization out of it. Take our relationship out of it. Don't take the trust out of it, because that's the reason we can have this conversation. What 3 things do you want to accomplish? And then take what they say and tie it back to what you do. And then how many of you are really willing, if they say, I want to do 1, 2, and 3, and you don't do any one of the 3, to hand them off to someone who actually will? That's when we're at our best. But our metrics don't support that, our organizations don't support that, and by the way, that's where their dollars are. We also know cues around various instruments. So we're talking about IRAs and 401k bequests, prospects. You know, they're talking about their retirement accounts. I don't know what to do. How do I handle this? I went through this with my mother. Dad was really good with money. Mom always was smarter and still is smarter than Dad. But Dad handled it, and I was surprised how my mother had no idea what was kind of where everything was. So I sat through all of these meetings with all these financial planners and attorneys and accountants, and you know, my mom was asking these questions. I'm not sure what to do. Well, Mom, you have to make choices as to where these assets are going to go someday. And then she'd look at me and she'd say, well, what should I do? Yeah, Mom, I'm not going to answer that for you. I'll help you find the answer, but it's not my money. So things like IRAs and all these things that are the growth of our future. Here's another one to kind of throw out there. What's the average size amount in a donor-advised fund in the United States at the beginning of 2025? Does anybody know the average dollar size in a DAF? $141,000. So it's smaller, but here's the key. The number of DAFs has gone up tenfold in the last 4 or 5 years. So there are more people who are thinking about this kind of philosophy. What am I going to do with my money? Insurance. We know what those cues are. I mean, how many people do we know, particularly in Omaha, because I think it was more of a thing, who've done whole life policies in their life? I'm one of them. Dad at 23 years old said, you need a whole life policy. I'm like, are you planning on me dying, Dad? I'm in the middle of law school. I'm okay. He goes, no, this is why we're going to do it. And you're going to pay $150 per month at 23 years old. And we're going to set this up with a pretty large sum of money. And this is going to be an investment vehicle. And I'm going to pay for it for the first 2 years. When you get out of law school, it's your problem. $150 every month still comes out of my checking account to go to that fund. Now how does that whole life insurance policy look from an investment perspective? And there's a lot of these. Another way of looking at it, another option, people trying to build wealth. The idea of annuities. This one has gotten up and down because of interest rates and the craziness. I think we're in for a spot where this is going to grow dramatically in the next 3 to 5 years, maybe a little shorter, maybe 2 to 3, because I think the stock market's going to bounce up and down and up and down. And if you're watching your account, because I like doing that, it's painful some days. And then they give you an app so you can see it all, and you're like, some days, woo, doing great. And some days you're like, oh, I can't look again. And then you look again, hoping it went back up. The point is that the volatility, I think this is going to be something that older people are going to begin to look at and say, I need to think about how I guarantee what I want or what I do or how I do it. And even though the minimum distributions, I have enough wealth, it's all over the place, and I don't quite know what that line is. Charitable remainder trusts, things about assets. This is huge in Nebraska. I fly out of here probably once a week. The number of people who own businesses that have no business in Omaha. Now, Tom left. I have one client in the 14 years I've been consulting. I've only had one client in Nebraska. My clients are all over the world. I'm out of here all the time, and I'm watching people all the time getting on airplanes who have businesses. Lincoln, Omaha, Wahoo, Elkhorn, Nebraska City, because I ask, oh, are you leaving? Yeah, oh, no, I have a company. They have these huge growth assets. And then they're like, now what do I do? Well, I'm going to sell it. Well, now I'm going to get hammered by taxes. Well, have you ever thought about giving 25% of your business to us when it's sold? That reduces your tax burden dramatically, still allows you to get a huge tax deduction, and you did something good for the community and something you believe in. The number of privately held businesses in this community is way above what's average. Do you know your donors well enough to know when they go through these conversations, thoughts, or concerns? Now, if you're looking at me, consulting, not a great option for this one because my company's not worth anything. The question is, how much money can I get out of it? But for a lot of other people, their asset is the company, and their out is selling it. And they're going to pay capital gains. And who thinks capital gains are going to stay low if we have a change in administration? Options. How do we present ourselves in a way of solving their problems, about their passion, and about their needs? Charitable lead trusts. I want to keep the asset, but gosh, I'd like to do something for you now. These are all dealing with the idea of, I want to give, the best option is I want to give my kids something to do, but I want them to have some of the money, but I don't want them to have it now. I'm an older dad. It took us about a decade to have children. We understood the mechanics. It just didn't quite work the way they explained it to us in high school. And so I have these young kids. I don't want my kids, I have triggers in God forbid something happens to my wife and I, both of us at the same time. I don't want my kids having the assets. I got wicked smart son and my daughter is a joy. But they'll screw it up. Remember Warren Buffett? I believe it. So could I do things? Could people do things to say, I want to leave this asset to my kids, but I don't want them to have control of it for 15 or 20 years, but the benefits of it can come to you in the meantime, or to the nonprofit. We also know, how many of you follow Russell James? Okay, good, makes me happy. When I see no hands, I'm like, what are you all reading? So Russell is somebody that I have spent some time with. This is from 2014, nothing has changed. How many of you know this? You should be knowing these two slides, there's actually 4, but 2 sets of data points, because if you know your donors, you know exactly when the most likely moments are for them to, in this case, add estate intentions with philanthropy. And here's the crazy thing, is that 7 of the 10 are health related. If we know our donors that well, we should know when they go, maybe not the moment it happens, but shortly thereafter, when their life has a moment that isn't what they want, or maybe it is. Maybe there's a birth of a grandchild. We also know, based on his research, when we're removed. And crazily enough, 8 of the 10 are health related. This comes back to why I believe the most important relationships we have with our best donor options are plan giving professionals like you, because we should know when these things occur. If you don't, you're not close enough to them. I didn't say you were the child, the son, the first phone call. But these things, if you're really that close, when something happens within a week or 2, maybe 3, there's probably a conversation. And here are what I would recommend are the greatest questions for you to ask your donors. Or, I'm sorry, the greatest question. I was always trying to figure out early on in my career how to get inside the head and hearts of my donors, particularly I was so much younger. And what I figured out was if I just made it about me, this got really easy. So I'd look at really wealthy people who had done well in life, and my wife and I were trying to have kids, so she would travel with me a lot. So it would be 4 people at a dinner table in Florida, in Palm Springs, in Scottsdale, in Miami, in Naples, along the Gulf Coast, particularly in the winter. And I'd say, we're looking at how we handle our financial future. I'm not asking for details, but could you tell me how you've positioned yourself? I'd like to learn from you. Now, there was some truth in that. I did want to learn. The more I learned, the more I could take care of my wife and family. But from a plan giving perspective, do you think they didn't go into details 98% of the time? Do you think that they actually held back? And my wife and I would leave a dinner, and she'd look at me and she'd go, I cannot believe what they just told you. And I'd say, uh-huh. And she goes, how? I didn't understand. My wife's a classically trained musician, much smarter, better looking than I am. And she'd go, I don't understand 80% of what they said, but what your eyes were, they were flickering. Like you were dialed in, like I didn't exist. I said, well, you didn't for a little while, because when they started talking about that business interest that they can't figure out how to get rid of, I'm thinking about instruments to how to help them get out of that and provide a charitable gift if they're interested in what we do. They would tell me everything. Just by making it, I want to be more successful like you. Who doesn't like someone looking across the dinner table and saying, you are so awesome, can I be more like you? Tell me how to do it. And all of a sudden, the world opened up as to what they were doing. So this is a great way, unless some of you are incredibly independently wealthy, which I'd like to sit down with you and chat about how you got. We actually can grow from this personally, but more importantly, our organizations can grow, because what we begin to find out is how people live, particularly those with wealth, and they live a little differently. They have advisors, they got legal counsel that many people don't have, and we begin to figure out, oh, here are their problems. Here are their challenges. This is when I began to learn about when a couple would look at each other and say, well, we got this plan, and then all of a sudden, about 5 minutes into it, they'd say, our greatest concern is that we just don't trust one of our sons if something were to happen that he'd go through the money too quickly. Wow. And I would always say, do you have help to take care of that? And it was fascinating how many times people with professional advisors would say, no. Would you like some help with that? There are ways you can protect your son and your money so that it's in his best interest. How do we do that? Well, I had a little advantage. I'm a tax lawyer. I'd say, well, you can do this and this, do this, and that way, only this. They'd go, I don't think anybody's ever brought that up. I'd like to. What was their problem? How do I take care of my son when we have a concern? Who solved their problem? Who got the charitable gift? Who had the trust? Who aligned with what they needed? Make it about them. They'll take care of you. And this is hard for even harder for non-planned giving people, major gift officers, because they're all in it for the dollars. Like, man, multi-year pledge, let's get as much as we can out of it. Yeah, you didn't answer any questions I actually asked you. Like, what is important to them? Why would they be involved? How would we maximize this? How do we get to transformational? Have you asked what their concerns are? What are their challenges? What are they going to deal with in the next 5 to 10 years? And the major gift officers that I have the privilege of dealing with go, no, I got the 5-year pledge. I'm like, yeah, and you left like $20 million on the table because all you were concerned about was the cash from the 5-year pledge. This is why we've got to go back into our gift officers and say, no, we're missing the point. Deepening the relationship. So, what are the major reasons that planned giving prospects tell us that they don't do planned gifts, estate gifts? How many of you? Oh, good for you. What's number 2? Complexity concerns. Good. But so here are the 6 reasons I think, and the attribution from the research that comes. What's consistent amongst most of them? Pardon me?
They didn't get around to it. It's on their to-do list.
Yeah, but I would say even more specific to the people in this room. Most of these are our fault. Yeah, we don't know them. We didn't bring it up. We didn't talk to them. We didn't offer it as a suggestion. We didn't know what their problems were. Most of these are dealing with issues that we actually can help them with. Whether it's lack of awareness. I didn't know we could do that. That's your fault. That's my fault for not saying, let me get you answers to the things you're trying to solve. Complexity. It's really not that hard. I've got this huge 401k. Well, have you ever thought about how charity could be a part of that? Oh, it's too complicated. No, it's not. It's a beneficiary form. Concerns about family objections, my all-time favorite. Yes, I have had these situations where there have been estate gifts multi-million-dollar estate gifts, and I have to sit down with the matriarch and or the patriarch and say, we've got to bring your kids into this discussion because they're going to sue us. And I don't want that. And you don't want that. Let's figure a way to do it together. How do I help you? Fear of control, loss of control. This is a big one for particularly older people who don't have the revenue anymore. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of money. My grandmother was the richest family in Carbondale, Illinois in 1929, and by 1931 they were the poorest. My grandmother lived until 2013. She was 97 or 8. I was very much a part of her life here in Western Omaha, my mom's mom. And to her dying day, she would look at me and say, I'm going to run out of money. And I'm like, Mom had brought me in to kind of advise her to help Grandma about what she wanted to do and how to protect her. And so I knew every dollar, every asset. And I'm like, there's no way you're going to run out of money unless you start buying yachts for the Missouri River. And this is my grandmother who's literally sending my mother to the Walgreens in Council Bluffs because Dinty Moore stew was 10 cents cheaper over there than it was right across the street at 156th Street and Q at Walnut Grove Retirement Community. My mother would go. I'm like, why are you? Because she wants to see the receipt. She was never going to run out of money, but it was a loss of control. What's going to happen to me? Lacking engagement. That is us, by definition. Personal financial need. We can protect you in the future. My greatest advice is that you have to make these more casual conversations. I loved taking off my sport coat, sitting down at a dinner table, and I will just use the name because he's passed on. My greatest conversations in certain gifts, which I'll keep out of it, but was a gentleman by the name of Mike Harper, who many of you may know. But I was over there every 2 weeks sitting on his patio overlooking the 14th or 15th green over Omaha Country Club with a broccoli cheese soup from Panera Bread and baguettes, because that's what he loved, and he provided the Diet Pepsi, and we'd sit and just chat. I brought my son and wife to his house multiple times because he'd say, I'd like to see him. We'll be there. Casual. If you make it too formal, the conversation doesn't go the way you want it to, because you're going to talk about things that are incredibly personal. And nobody talks about something really, really personal with a suit on, a tie on. They may talk about the details of how to execute it with a team of people, but the emotion, the passion, find casual ways of having a cocktail or playing golf or sitting around a cup of tea or whatever it is that they want to do and you're comfortable with to make it more personable. Before getting into the language, I want to spend 10 seconds on ethics. I hear people say, well, this is people's personal business and all, and I think most of us are way past this. But I want to give you something to take back to fight this issue. If our ethics are based on the premise that our job is to do what's in the best interest of our donors, does anybody disagree with that? Isn't that the premise of ethical behavior in our industry? What is best for them, not what's best for us? And how do I help them do it? I think there's nothing more ethical in our profession when done correctly than estate and planned giving. Because it's all about them. How do I help you do what you need to do? And so when people ask this question, I'm like, actually, I think of the opposite. I think if we do it correctly and we make it about them, we're doing everything ethical that our profession demands, which makes this the highest calling of what we do as an industry. So the answer is, may you? Yes, you may. And now we're going to get into the emotion. So I want to get deeper into asking questions. What is really important to you? So now we're kind of moving into this very specific questions I usually recommend. What concerns of the world that your children may have to deal with do you want to deal with? What is the community's greatest concerns and issues? I have no idea what the answers are, but I can guarantee you begin to ask these questions, they'll tell you what they want to do with their money. I always believe in trying to get feedback. If you have something you're trying to accomplish, take them 50% of the answer and ask for them to actually give you impact or input as to what's going on. The famous saying, if you ask somebody for money, you get advice. If you ask them for advice, you'll get money, is evident here. Take them half of a solution. What are your thoughts about? Don't ask them for money. What are your thoughts about the solution? Now, you may have the whole plan in place. Doesn't make any difference. Don't ever take a plan giving prospect the complete plan. Take them part of it and ask them, what do you think? What are we missing? Because you might be surprised, they might actually add something that's really kind of cool. And even if they say crazy, once they begin to engage, now we know we have connection. These are all little tactics about how to get into the appropriate conversations. And then there's the last piece. You have to bring this up. So I think that there are 7 different ways that this happens, and 7 different inflection points in conversations, relationships, in the relationship building process that they come up. The question is, can you recognize them and pivot into the right question? So I'm actually going to tell you what I believe the answers are. The first is the shared vision. I know your passion runs deep. Have you ever thought about how you could maximize the impact for something you believe in, both now and in the future? And I love grouping. Some of our best donors are thinking about how they can do something now and in the future aligned with something you believe in. Is that something we could talk about? They share the vision, the mission of the organization, and it's well established. Impact oriented, kind of the communitarian. How in the world can their money, their passion, their intent, need to make a difference? Have you ever thought about how you could do that in a really supportive way through your estate? Have you ever talked about it, thought about it? If this is really important to you and philanthropy is something you believe in, have you thought about how this could make a difference with this, this, and this? Conversational, probably my favorite. It just comes up. You've got a great relationship and you just keep talking and all of a sudden they start talking about their problems. We can help you do that. Did you know there are options for that? I'd love to find out more if you want so I can help you. These are the ones I do now with clients. I have one next Tuesday or Monday where they've got this incredibly philanthropic person, but she doesn't know who to trust. And they've said, we got this guy who we consult with who literally does this. He'd love just to listen to what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe he can come up with something. Okay, we'll do it via Zoom. They'll be in San Francisco. And I've done this with, I can't even tell you how many clients, and they go, after an hour, I'm like, you might want to think about this, 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 and this. And the nonprofit will call me afterwards and say, we didn't even know that was possible. That's you. How do you have those conversations, partnership with your major gift team, to say, when you have a problem, somebody can't, let us come in and partner with you to figure out what the options might be. Financial planning. In the moment of health or possibly some other timing that they're going through, or selling a business or selling an interest. How many of you have, this is going to become even more prevalent, physicians who are part of your donor database or donor relationships? The privatization of healthcare that's occurring is going to create an immense opportunity in this area. How do I know this? Because they're buying into building private healthcare models. Orthopedic hospitals, the cardiac rehab places, dialysis, independent private practices, that it's more about not the private, what I would call primary care, but more specialized care. That's some of the reason hospitals are struggling, is because the good payers in orthopedics, as an example, are leaving. How do I know this? See, this is the bad knee. This is the replacement knee. I'm in from about my 6 or 8 week checkup. My surgeon, Kevin O'Malley, tells me, I need to let you know I'm going to retire come December 31st. I said, so we're going to schedule this one right now because I don't want to do it with anybody else. But then I went, well, Kevin, I know you're a founder here at Midwest One of the Institute because I know the people who did it. I said, obviously this becomes a real interesting tax issue for you figuring out what you're going to do. And my wife sitting in a chair just does this. She goes. And he looks at me, he goes, well, this is an interesting conversation. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I said, well, what this? And so I kind of walk him through it. And he's got to be bought out by his partners. And he's going to have this enormous business tax problem. And my wife just sat there and shook her head like this. And I gave him 3 or 4 thoughts about doing a charitable remainder trust and some other things. And he has a daughter, his 6th daughter, who's just a saint, has Down syndrome. It's a really important issue for him on a philanthropic perspective. Kevin is the surgeon and the orthopedic expert for the Creighton basketball teams in the College World Series. This is the guy. And he literally cannot figure out how to get out of this. You know what Kevin doesn't know how to spell? M-O-N-E-Y. He has no idea. And in 10 minutes, I gave him about 6 suggestions, and my wife goes, well, that was a lot shorter than I thought it would be. This is something that a lot of people in private business, and if you have physicians as part of this, are going to be going through. Personalization. Everybody's situation's unique. All of a sudden, it just comes up. So in my case, in my family, it was when we lost Dad. All of a sudden, there was this personal situation. We have to figure out what we're going to do. The communal experience. This is Omaha. How do we make Omaha better? That all of a sudden, all of these people gathering together. We are all familiar with the great work that I give Walter. Walter should have a statue downtown for Heritage Services. It's now branched out in a couple other, after Walter passed, that there are other similar services that came out of that particular endeavor. But the point is that the communal aspect of how we want our community to do something together. So I don't know where Tom must have left. But this is the latest one, is the behavioral and emotional hospital that was built at 83rd or 85th or 86th and Dodge, that's now going to be part of Children's. It was a communal aspect. We've got all these people trying to do something. But the problem is most of the time in Omaha, it's done in cash. It's not done from an estate perspective. I think there's a huge opportunity here. You all had Matt Boyd come and speak in March or April from Bridges Trust. Wife Sarah's a saint. Matt's awesome. There's a reason that Bridges Trust and others are beginning to take some philanthropic people and placing them inside, because that's this. What are we going to do with all these assets that's a community-based, because that's Omaha. blunt, politely, could we talk about how you might like to be involved with our estate, with our organization from an estate or long-term plan giving process? If you're not finding one of these 7 in every conversation you have with your best donors, then you're just leaving all the money on the table. So that's either you or a gift officer doing some kind of what I call requalification and bringing you in, different models to do it in, depending on the size of the organization, that you have to find a way to do this. You get these slides. You can take them, use them, change them, ignore them, delete them out of your inbox. I don't care. But this is what the future is. The last part are the blended, which I know you've had a previous presentation on. Maybe that's what Matt did back in April, or I think if I remember correctly looking at your website. But here are just 3 different options to include blended conversations if you're in a campaign or in an annual campaign or an annual process or whatever, about 3 different options of language that you and or a gift officer can use that would elevate the conversation into an estate giving option or opportunity. Some of it is about the idea, I'll start here with about, I want to do more. Well, there are ways of doing that. How many of us have heard of our gift officers saying our donors want to do more, but they don't know how to do it? Or, you want to elevate someone's leadership gift in a campaign. We need you to do more. I mean, how many of us have had those conversations behind closed doors like, these are our 3 lead donors and we need them to do more because that's going to elevate other people as well? Here it is. Pairing them with others who are strategic and leaders in our community. Others like you have figured out how to do this with cash and with intended and state intentions. Would you like to talk about that? The point is that all of these tactics that I'm glad to share, and hopefully they're helpful, I cannot go back and say it enough. This is the future of philanthropy. The money is behind a marketable wall. The economics of our country are going to, I'm not suggesting a depression. I don't think that's going to happen at all. But I don't think they're going to be as clear as maybe they were that we've enjoyed prior to COVID in the last 15 years. And I think people, with the asset changes and the decisions that they have to make, you are the future. But we've got to go back inside of our organizations and fight for the connections and the resources, not to be seen as a threat of the gift officers who think you're coming to take all their money, but the partners that are going to elevate their work, for the organizations and our finances to better understand that we need endowments and we need bigger dollars, and that's going to come from this particular process, and to engage with our donors in meaningful ways that get them to what they want to do. And that's when we're going to be at our best. If we can align with internal gift officers and gift-giving processes. If we can align with finance to see a bigger picture that where the dollars and assets really are. And we can position our donors about what's important to them, we will elevate plan giving dramatically. I'll conclude with this. I'm glad to stay and answer any questions, or you can yell and scream at me if you want, or throw rotten fruit, whatever works for you, I'm fine. There's an old Gaelic saying that I love. Some people make things happen, some people watch things happen, and then there are those who wondered what happened. I've come to appreciate at now 55, as I said yesterday, double cinco, that we fall into that one of those 3 categories every moment that we're breathing. Much of it is a choice. You choose whether you're going to be someone who tries to make something happen, watch things happen, and sometimes just watch, you'll be wondering what happened. But then there are those moments when even when you're someone who's making something happen, something occurs and you become somebody who only can watch what happens and then wonder why it's happening to them. And I go back to where I started, my son. I was brought up, my sisters were, but primarily me, to be someone who challenges status quo, was never satisfied with anything, who would always try to find better ways of doing something, that would never, ever sit back and watch, but stick my nose in and to be someone who would change the things that I see and experience. And when my son stopped breathing in my arms, I just became someone who was wondering what happened. Part of plan giving is those moments when families are trying to figure out how do they control what they want to do. Your work, your incredible work and investment into the relationships you have are helping people to be people who choose to make things happen for themselves and their families, so they have a lot less of wondering what happened when they don't. So I believe in gratitude. Let me say this. Thank you for what you do. I'm not moving. We've remodeled the house. This is my home. I need a great Omaha. I need a great Nebraska. And if any of you could find a little more NIL money for the football team, I'd be happy with that too. But I need this community to be great because it's where I live and where I will die and where my children will be raised. So I want to say thank you for what you do. You're making a difference for a lot of different people and a lot of different missions that make this community, and not just Omaha, but Nebraska, a better place. Thank you, because that makes a difference for my family and what you do. With that, I'm glad to entertain any questions, thoughts, concerns you might have. Please. Your name again, I apologize.
My name is Janice Japp, and I'm actually a visitor here with Randy today, but
You picked a bad day to be a visitor, I want to tell you.
being in Nebraska, and I'm from a farm,
Mhm.
do you have any insight about dealing with farm families, farm communities?
I've taken a percentage of yields, cattle, farmland. Yes, so most of our rural state, and I love Omaha, but we are an agricultural state. With the, I don't know what a price per acre in the Platte River Valley is going nowadays. Is it $9,000, $8,000, $10,000 an acre? I'm not going to be far off, maybe a little high. They're higher now. It's gone back up. It was at one point 14, 15,000, but I think it dropped. Maybe it's gone back up. Yes, these are conversations we need to be having because we have a lot of farmers who are trying to figure out, I'm worth 40, 50, 60 million dollars, and I don't have a penny, and I'm driving a John Deere that's 10 years old in my tractor and driving a Ford pickup that's 10 years old, but they're worth a fortune. Yes, these are more critical conversations, in my opinion, with people who have locked assets like that than they are like with my mother, who has options. They're going to have to find a different way of looking at their kind of portfolio, their world, their finances. This should be a conversation with every family farm in the United States, because most of them don't want to talk about it. They think something's going to happen. I've dealt with many of them, and they literally say, it'll be taken care of. And I'm like, nope, you're going to have to sell an enormous part of this parcel because you aren't going to deal with it now. So the answer is, it's, first of all, in my opinion, taking the overall concern away from just the general subject. We can't let this go if this is what we want. And number two is, I always believe that control is the best conversation. It's your money, your asset, your farm. What is it you want to do? There may be limitations based upon taxes, laws that don't allow it. But the more we're able to work with those families, the better off we are to get them to where they want to go. I want to sell it. My kids don't want any part of it, but I don't want to pay the capital gains. I've got two sons that want to take the farm over, and I don't know how to get it to them. There are answers to both, but if you don't have the conversation, then what you end up with is probably not the answers that you want. I would also advise is that, and I can say this because I am one of them, and some of you may be as well, tax lawyers are the worst to have these conversations with their clients because they think of instruments and not options. That's why what we do is so important, because we provide them not instruments, but options about what they want. And I just did this for a client. Actually, they brought the lawyers on to the conversation yesterday afternoon, and they went, we didn't even know some of these things existed. I went, that's really not what you want to say in front of your clients, but sure. The point is that yes, this should be actually more important in our agricultural heartland than less, because they have less options because most of their assets are in cattle, farm, equipment, not liquidity like we tend to think is most prominent. I don't know if that answered your question or not. Okay. Yes, sir. No, the last book I wrote was about how CEOs are killing us in philanthropy and why they're not engaged. I wrote the book for CEOs. That's not going to help you here. Plus, I make no money from it. I basically give it away. Yes, sir. Yes?
Wondering how to bring someone into a conversation about a charitable trust. You know, when many of us have never actually dug in, and I know we can gets captured off. I know Charitable Solutions is there. But how, is there a service where you can talk to people that are doing these things other than maybe Charitable Solutions? I don't know, maybe. Are there?
I do it all the time. Yeah, and with clients and for free sometimes. So the language is, you've got a really unique situation. I can kind of give you the first 20% of options, but at a certain point, there's probably some expertise that we need. I know someone that can help us find the answers that fit what you need best. Can we include someone else in the conversation? If I can help you, call me. I'm not drafting instruments that they need their lawyer to do, but I do this all the time. I mean, literally have another one next week. Probably $25 million in assets. They have no idea what to do. In an hour, I'll have a plan for them. Or options for them. They'll have to choose what they want to do. Yeah. And the other thing I would suggest to everyone, how many of you are lawyers in the room? A couple of. So even lawyers, don't be afraid of this. No one's asking you to draft anything on behalf of the donor. I hope, because that's not your job. They should have their own lawyer draft it. All you're doing is guiding them to options. Here's what's possible. Would you like to talk about it? Would this help you? Let's find someone who can give us some of the details, run the numbers, whatever that is. Other questions? It's 11 o'clock, so I want to be respectful, but I'll stick around. Nobody wants me, so this is like great for me. Appreciate it.
Great share. Appreciate it. You mentioned a little bit about metrics that organizations ideally would be tracking that help enable this movement forward. And so what would those be if you could wish that
3.
for your organization?
3, how many gift and plan giving, estate giving conversations were initiated by the team? How many of you track that now? Couple, not enough. Number 2, how many turned into intentions? Notice, I didn't say dollar figures. I don't give a damn about dollars. I want to know, are they in there? And this is the crazy one. I think we should count dollars twice. I got a couple CFOs that would come out of the woodwork right now, because we should count it once to incentivize the gift officer to be able to bring the gift to fruition. We need proper documentation. We need as much as we can get. There should be some rules and regulations. And we should count it again when it comes in. Because how many times have we heard somebody got the gift, a gift officer, brought in the intention, the gift officer leaves, or the communicator, the relationship manager leaves, new person comes in, there's no incentive for me to go do that because it's already been counted, and so then they don't hear from the organization for 6 or 8 years, and what happens? They change it. I think it should be counted twice. There's a difference between GAAP accounting and counting. I'm in the counting business. What you do over there, and yes, I have a master's in finance, I understand GAAP rules. You can do what the hell you want in the finance office. I don't care. I'm going to count it twice. When it comes in, or when we get the intention, and when they get. So we're incentivizing relationship building. And you might get more of the money if you actually build a relationship when the others screw it up. So those are the 3. Bet.
What do you wish 25-year-old you beside that?
2 things. It's a great question. That integrity in our business is exponentially more important than anybody ever tells you. I view it at almost the same level as my marriage. That integrity. That if I really want donors to trust me, I have to treat them at the same level I treat my wife. I guess if you don't like your donors and you don't like your wife or your husband or whatever, that's a different conversation. I think my wife's a saint. So I'm going to make sure she is always the most important thing that I do every day. I treat my donors in the same manner. Integrity matters. The second is that it's an old adage. If you look around the room and you think you're the smartest person in the room, there's one of 2 possibilities. You're a fool or you're in the wrong room. I always am trying to find people that are smarter than I am. I didn't understand that because there was a lack of sense of vulnerability that I should be all-knowing, all-seeing, all-being, omnipotent, and there's no omnipotence. There's just relationships of people that you can turn to when you need them that help you figure out what the answers are to the challenges or moments that you are going through. So the two things I would say is, number one is integrity, and the treatment of relationships is critical. And number two, find smarter people and hang around with them and listen to them. Use your anatomy proportionally, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen more than you talk. And in doing so, you'll better yourself and the people around you. It's a great question. Hadn't thought about it that way. I had to come up with something quick. Thank you all. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for what you do.